Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
So yesterday, of course, your fierce defense of the incredible U.S. men's soccer team, the players, Mike.
Yes.
Once again, absolving the players of any.
I didn't absolve them of everything. I just said they weren't the only problem.
Absolved. You totally absolved them.
I said it was a majority coach and then second half players.
Absolve them.
Okay.
Yeah, they can do no wrong in your eyes. They're your people.
I love Fuller and Balogun with my whole heart, and I will stand on that hill until the day I die. What is interesting is as soon as we got off the show...
Interesting way of phrasing it.
Yes. As soon as we got off the show yesterday, I love him. He's an Arsenal. He was an Arsenal player. I adore him.
I know.
As soon as we got off the show yesterday, we mentioned how Jurgen Klopp was the main target the U.S. had. I said it was unlikely. Half an hour later, Jurgen Klopp rebuffed the U.S.'s approach to be head coach, unsurprisingly to anybody out there, because, spoiler, dude literally just stopped coaching because he was tired. He's not going to get back in for anything right now. He's taken at least a year off. I would be surprised if he takes a new job before next summer. I think he would consider it next summer, but it's all down to him. He's one of the best coaches in the world. He can take as much time as he wants. If he wants to not coach for 3 years, or if he wants to coach literally in a month and a half, he can do what he wants. So yeah, we got to give him the time. So no Jurgen Klopp for the U.S., but that is okay. It was officially announced that Greg Berhalter was leaving, and fans celebrated on social media. And it's not a great thing to celebrate someone getting fired. It's not. It's never a good look. And the fact that that was the first response from 99% of the fan base for the U.S. men's national team is bad. Like, not in a even remotely positive manner for the U.S., for the fans, for anybody. The fact that that was the first response. And it was for me as well, because we sit here and he was like, yeah, we're doing great things, and you're drawing 1-1 to teams, or you're losing 5-0 to Uruguay or to Colombia, whoever. Like, it was bad.
You see my point. You see my point about that.
I do see your point.
Do I think the talent level is actually higher than it's been? Yes. But they're still getting essentially the same results.
And that it is the fallacy of, it's insanity. It's, you do the same thing over and over again. You think at some point it'll work. It never is going to work because you're going insane. That's the problem the U.S. has. And my heart says the first step was the changing players around, and we got some change with players. We have most of this team outside of like Tim Ream are 25 and under. Right. They are all young. They're all going to get better. They're all going to improve. Right. Okay, that's a first step in the right direction. Give them a couple more years, they'll develop. Step 2 is the coach. For whatever reason, we decided last time around to just stick with the same guy, even though he showed us he was not good enough, which did not make sense at the time, and that was the problem. Was you shouldn't have brought him back in the first place, and you did, and then you bring him back, and the same thing happens, and now you're like, oh, now we're going to look for a new coach. Well, you should have looked a year ago, and the guy who was available was Jesse Marsh, who's now coaching Canada, your rival. Like, come on. It was just terrible. I mean, downright terrible.
Look, the easiest move to make is to replace the coach.
Yes.
That's the easiest move to make. Now, whomever comes in has to take a long, hard look at personnel. Right? And whatever you do with personnel, whatever you have, you need to adapt what you do to the people you do have.
And there are a lot of coaches out there that don't do that. We've talked about Gareth Southgate with England. Apparently, the rumor on the street is that the English FA is going to bring him back for the next 2 years to coach through the World Cup. And English fans are up in arms because he has been as bad as Berhalter has been. England have the most talent in the world. Their team is the most talented in the world. But they cannot do anything with the team they have constructed until they substitute players on and then they score. This last match they played, they looked terrible against the Netherlands. The Netherlands weren't good, but England was bad. Downright bad. They made it to the 119th minute, I believe.
Yeah.
And then they were, or 90 whatever it was minute, and decided, let's bring on a new striker. Because, spoiler, the player playing up front, Harry Kane, has been terrible the entire tournament.
Right.
And they were like, let's not bring the guy on who was one of the best players in the English Premier League last season. Let's just not use him until the 90th minute. They bring him on. What does he do? 2 minutes later, he scores.
Right.
That was exactly what happened. And then the English press are like, oh, Gareth Southgate's the greatest coach since sliced bread. It's like, no, he's not. He made the change every fan was calling for in the 40th minute. Finally, he made the decision in the 90th and was like, oh, I'll take credit for it. No, you shouldn't.
Okay, so let's start with this. I'll give you 2 football examples. The Green Bay Packers of 1959 and the Pittsburgh Steelers of 1969-70. Vince Lombardi takes over as the head coach. Now, they're in different spots. Again, these are the 2 of the worst teams in the NFL that are taken over by Vince Lombardi and Chuck Noll. The United States is not in that part, but they're still spinning their wheels against teams they should be beating. Just based on population, they should be beating them. All right. Again, this isn't trying to climb over the top. How do we beat Portugal, Spain, Italy, Germany, England?
This is just
Brazil?
getting onto the same field as them.
This is just to get to the round to face them. And they can't get to the round. They, 18, they didn't even qualify. So when Lombardi took over the Packers, he sat down and reviewed what was then film of a 110-1 football team and evaluated every player. Right? He named 3 players that were safe from being cut or traded. Jim Ringo, the center, All-Pro, Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Bobby Dillon and a guy named Dan Curry. Now, this is like mixed in now eventually with the Stars and the Taylors and so forth and the Hornings.
Yeah.
Right, that were there, but everybody knew they were safe. But he only named 3. All right? Everybody else wasn't safe. Okay? Now, the 1958 draft produced Jim Taylor, Ray Nitschke, Jerry Kramer. Right? And before that, Bart Starr. Before that, Paul Hornung. So they knew that group was safe. Right? But of the veterans beyond that, those are the only 3. Because he knew he had to change the team over. Now let's go to Chuck Noll. And I got this story from Andy Russell, the late Andy Russell. Andy was telling me, he said, Steve, he says, he comes in, he says, I ended up being one of only 5 guys from the previous team that survived. 5. Now, again, these were 2 of the worst teams in the league, 110-1. You're not good. The Steelers were 1-13 the year before Chuck Noll took over. So this is a different scenario. But that's what you need a good coach to do. He may look at those 20 players and he may say, you know what? I've watched it over and over again. 17 are good. I got to change 3. Or he may look at it and go, you know what? I need to change 10. That's what you need first, a good, long, hard look, because you've got to make sure whatever you do has to be done before this year is out.
I agree.
Because it has to be, you have to be playing together next year as a collective group to then play in the World Cup in 26 when you host it.
May I take a little bit of a step backwards for a second on the players and just talk about them? So I'm looking at the roster we had October 10th, 2017 against Trinidad and Tobago. To qualify for the 2018 World Cup, we had to just not lose. That was it. It was just not lose the game. We lost 2-1 because we sucked. The only players left from that team that are still involved to this day with the U.S. are Christian Pulisic and Tim Ream.
And they both deserve to be there.
Yes.
They both need to be in the World Cup team.
Yes. Every other player, from Tim Howard to DeAndre Yedlin, all the way to Chris Wondolowski and Clint Dempsey, every other player on that team, as Dick Girardi once said, gone.
But you have to remember, too, age plays a role, too.
Yes, but it's not just the age thing. A lot of these players are still playing to this day, are still young enough to play. The thing is, the U.S. said, out, Kellen Acosta, out, DeAndre Edlin, out, Darlington Nagbe, out. These players are young enough to play. It's just they aren't good enough. And so what did the U.S. do? They put the eggs in the basket of developing talent and bringing in players who have U.S. citizenship, who are good enough to play for us, and also players who give us options. Someone like a Fuller Balogun, who, as of a year ago, did not have an allegiance to any nation. He could play for the U.S., he could play for, I believe, Nigeria, he could play for England, and I think Germany.
It sounds like Colonel Tom Parker with Elvis. What the heck?
He could play for all of those different nations, and the U.S. pitched
man without
him.
a country.
Exactly, but the U.S. got him in. They brought him in. Tim Weah. His dad, of course, is George Weah, the Liberian player, one of the greatest of all time. He could have played for Liberia. He could have played for the U.S., could have played for England or Germany. Chose the U.S. And you go down the line, a lot of these players are people the U.S. has poached from other nations because they saw the talent they have. Gio Reyna, good enough to play for us. Yunus Musa, good enough to play for many other nations. They brought these guys in. So the talent is improving from where it is. And again, outside of like Tim Ream, the team is young, really, really young.
Yeah.
Which gives us a sense of positivity.
And
they're young.
And Weah showed his immaturity by getting a red card. I mean, I'm sorry, you can't do that.
You can't do that. But that's the thing, is this team is young and they have options now. There are a lot of players that were left off this roster that people were unhappy got left off. One of the best players on the team, Sergio Dest, was not here because he was injured. He was meant to be our left back or our right back, depending on where we wanted to play him. He was not in the team because he was injured. So you bring him in, you bring another player or two that you really want. All of a sudden, this team is young and good and should give you a shot at the World Cup. The problem was we needed this tournament to go well, or at least show something. Even if we say lost 5-4 to Uruguay in the group stages, we put up a fight. We showed that we can play against them. That would have given us something positive. Just showing you can compete on the same level as the other team is what you need to happen. We didn't do that. If we had shown any semblance of we can compete with the best of them, we can fight them. We drew 0-0 to Brazil in one of our friendly matches. Okay, it was a step in the right direction, but then all of it went away when we played terribly in the matches that mattered. If we showed anything positive, it would have been like, okay, we can do this. Fuller Balogun showed us some positivity. He was like, okay, we can do this. We have a good player up front. We have a good team around him. The problem is the system did not fit. Certain players didn't fit the system, and he didn't have all the players he needed. Very clearly, there are players in positions that should not be playing for this team. So you take the step of you saying of you need to go back through and reevaluate talent. You have a year to reevaluate your talent, find players.
I think you get 6 months.
Yeah. You have 6 months until the next stage of test. Basically, you have 6 months to figure out who you want to test out, and then 6 months to find your roster. And then you have 1 year countdown to get it right.
Let me tell you the state of U.S. soccer. If you go to casual fans, they can name several players on the women's team. They can name one player on the men's team.
Pulisic. Yeah.
Pennsylvania guy, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Hershey, PA guy.
So that's where they are. Now I want to get to something that's probably of more interest to fans.
We've talked so much soccer here. I'm so happy.
I figured we'd get that out of the way. All right.
Ow. Hurts the heart. Yeah. What's up, Steve? What's going on? What do you want to talk? What do you want to chat about?
Actually, I want to talk about in conference realignment schedules.
Okay.
So people complain a lot about non-conference schedules. And Penn State will be a team that, for example, will be playing West Virginia to start the season, which is a very good Big 12 team.
Yes.
Very good Big 12 team.
Strong start to the season.
Right. But I will say this about realignment. Realignment is giving us matchups that I think are intriguing for fans. Who would have thought I mean, I never would have thought in my lifetime that Georgia would play at Texas.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing at Texas this year.
Yeah.
You know, I thought it was great that it was non-conference the last 2 years. Texas played Alabama. Great. Mm-hmm. But now because of the conference, Georgia's going to play a game at Texas.
Yep.
Tennessee is going to play at Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State's playing at USC. UCLA is coming here. Washington is coming here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as I'm concerned, this is a makeup game, but it's a conference game. Ohio State is playing at Oregon.
Yes.
Because of COVID, that game got axed. Oregon went, and they played at Ohio State, won the game without Thibodeau, I might add. But realignment is giving us intriguing matchups under the guise of conference games that we did not have before.
Mm-hmm.
And realignments have done that. LSU's been playing Texas A&M every year.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama's been playing Texas A&M every year.
Mm-hmm.
Missouri's been playing South Carolina. No, forget it.
Oh my God! Shots are being fired at everybody.
I didn't
today.
say every game was like,
Who have
wow.
you not fired a shot at today, Steve? Jeez.
Okay. I'm not saying every game is like must-see TV. Right? But that's what realignment has done.
Mm-hmm.
Games in the past that would have been just terrific non-conference, right, dangle the carrot games are now conference games, and you have to play them.
Mm-hmm.
In some place in the rotation, Georgia's got to play Texas. Some point, Texas has got to go back to Athens.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's great. That part is actually great for the sport.
We are going to see a lot more parity. We're going to see a lot more of an idea going throughout the seasons of who actually is good and who is not, and who is going to stand the test, because you're going to get games like, as we've kind of talked about this year, Penn State's going to have to go up against Ohio State and Washington.
That's right.
And the USCs of the world and West Virginia. And then in other years, face Oregon, face Michigan. Like, you're going to have 2 to 4 games a season where it's going to be a dogfight. It's not going to be a game, respectfully, against an Illinois, where as soon as you get out ahead, it's much easier to stay out ahead versus an Oregon, who is going to fight you until the last breath.
Right. So
firing shots, geez.
but that's the difference, because what's happening is that in the Big Ten you will play. The SEC doesn't have this.
Mm-hmm.
The SEC is brilliant how they schedule, because they make you think every week there's a that the SEC's got some big games this week. Oh yeah, and then you realize after 5 years that not everybody remotely played everybody. As I made the point 1,000 times, Georgia, Texas A&M has been in the conference since 2011. Georgia has never played a game in College Station,
which is wild.
Right, but that's what happens in the SEC. Hey, Georgia and Alabama have not exactly had 1,000 games between them in the conference. They have had very few games between them in the conference over the decades. You know, relatively speaking, because that's the way the SEC does business.
But it's just how they scheduled, Steve. What could you possibly mean by that?
Well, it's just how they do things. They only have 8 conference games. That's the other part. But now with this, TV, as much as we can be negative about what TV does, the positive is they pour in a lot of money. Like, that's a big positive.
Quite a bit.
And the exposure is unbelievable. But people complain about kickoff times and things like that. I understand that. We've talked about that a lot on the show. I don't have to go back into it again for the 1,000th time. But they are helping to dictate better matchups in conference, because they need strong inventory for ratings. I mean, you don't think the first year out of the gate that it's a coincidence that Penn State's playing Washington UCLA and USC right out of the gate, that's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
You don't think it's a coincidence Ohio State's playing at Oregon? It's not a coincidence. Right? I mean, it's the way it is.
Yeah.
Right? Because they want marquee matchups that draw eyeballs to the TV set. Now, the Big Ten at least is doing this in such a way where in a 5-year span, you will play everybody home and away.
Yes.
There's
no Georgia, Texas A&Ming it.
That's outstanding. That's brilliant, and it at least gives you more of a feel of conference. Okay? In basketball, you will play everybody. Okay? Women's basketball, men's basketball. I think women's basketball is playing everybody.
Yeah.
Right. We'll see. But men's basketball is 20 games. Women's basketball does not. I think they have 18, right?
I can check.
But you can check that. Men's basketball is 20 games. You're playing everybody, 3 home and aways and 14 one plays. And that's at least gives you a feeling of conference. And the non-conference part is going to be interesting moving forward.
You're right. They only have 18. You'd be correct. They have 8 home only, 8 away only, and 1 home and away.
Right. So they'll play everybody. That means they're playing everybody.
Yeah.
That's the important part to me, is that they're playing everybody. Not the number of games, just the fact that they are. That, again, is a feeling of conference.
Yeah.
At least, which is difficult to do when you have a conference this large. I know people want intriguing non-conference games. Remember, it is, of course, 25% of the regular season schedule.
Yeah.
Part of what is going to dictate to me what you do with your non-conference schedule is going to be how the college football playoff conducts its business and what the criteria in their minds happens to be if there's a swing factor.
Yeah.
I've always gone back to 2016 when Penn State rattled off 9 consecutive wins, all in the Big Ten, right, including Ohio State, including Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game and so forth. Yet Washington got in because they only had 1 loss. But Penn State's non-conference schedule that particular year was tougher than Washington's. And that's where one of the losses did occur, was the non-conference. Washington had Portland State. I want to say
Don't disrespect Portland State.
I want to say
Steve.
Portland State, Idaho, and Rutgers were their 3 non-conference games that year. And my point was, really? And so they sent a message. It's not just like, okay, this is who Penn State played, this is who they played. Okay. The message they sent was it didn't matter that they played those 3 teams. Well, if that's the message to everybody. It doesn't matter you played those 3 teams. Now, in a 12-team playoff, will the current committee, and the committee changes over all the time, do they send a message that a good non-conference game helps you get in? We'll have to find out. That's something we won't know until they actually start voting over 2 years.
I'll say we won't know until it happens, and it happens with a big enough instance where it will matter.
Where it was a determining factor in putting 1 team in and keeping 1 team out.
Where it's toss-up, and it's like, who are we going to take here? Which one?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's going to be interesting to see. I know Michigan's finally going to play Tech. Look at Michigan last year. Michigan's non-conference schedule, again, was, you have to be kidding me. Right?
Yeah.
Michigan has been a long time since Michigan really played a marquee non-conference game. Now, they used to play Notre Dame on a regular basis. That's fine.
Yeah.
Right? Nothing wrong with that. But Hawaii, UConn, so, I mean, some directional school. I mean,
Citadel.
I don't know if they played Citadel, but
Alabama does.
well, again, the SEC has 4 non-conference openings, No, got Scott Fransky, too, for next week. Talking about the Phillies. Paul Skenes, no-hitter, take him out.
We were going to chat about Paul Skenes a little bit.
Yeah, no-hitter, take him out.
But it's...
But that's my point about that. What do you do with it? And you have to really watch what the thought process is of the committee moving forward. Penn State had Auburn in back-to-back years, won both games. Right? They beat West Virginia last year. They've got West Virginia this year. So you have Power 5 transition to Power 4 teams on the schedule, and Penn State's had one of those in each of the years that James Franklin's been the head football coach.
Yeah.
Now, next year, that's, I think at some point Syracuse is coming on this thing. Are they Power 4? Kidding. What?
Hurt.
Wounded.
Come on, we're in the ACC. It's air quotes around it, but we're in the ACC.
No, but they've had a Power 4, Power 5 team on their schedule every year since he's been the head coach.
Yeah.
I believe next year there is not. Because I think
Syracuse.
I want to say next year is Temple.
Let's find out. The Syracuse 2024 football schedule will consist of Ohio, Georgia Tech, Stanford, Holy Cross, UNLV,
These are the people you
Cal, UConn. Yeah, not a lot.
No, let's see. I know future Penn State football schedules, so I'll look at that. I mean, because and they've had it every year. Meanwhile, Mercer's playing Alabama the weekend before Auburn. Like they're playing, in other words, they're playing FCS teams.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see. 2024 home away. These are all the Big Ten opponents. See if they have anything here in the non-conference. No. I'll look it up. But the issue is going to be how they treat the non-conference, and I think the signal has to come not from Penn State. The signal has to come directly from the college football playoff. All right, so we got West Virginia, let's see, Bowling Green, Kent State. Nevada, FIU, Villanova is 2025. Okay, so that's the first time under James Franklin there'll not be a Power 4 opponent on there. But your home schedule includes Nebraska, Oregon, right? Indiana, Northwestern. And you go on the road to Iowa, Michigan State, Ohio State, UCLA, Rutgers. 26, they have Marshall. They're at Temple. There's where the Temple game is in Buffalo.
There we go.
Right? But your home games include USC, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Purdue, Rutgers. You go on the road to Maryland, Michigan, Northwestern, Washington. Right? I mean, again, you've got all these games. 27, Syracuse. Okay, so that's a W.
Wow. Oh, no, geez. I was going to compliment you. Now,
Syracuse, Delaware, Temple. So they have one Power 4 on there, okay, in Syracuse. But you also have games at home with Michigan, Washington, Maryland, Michigan State. You go on the road to Illinois, Indiana, Oregon.
So you're losing
Purdue,
against
Wisconsin.
Syracuse. Got it.
And then they go back and they play at Syracuse up at the Dome, whatever it's called that year.
Jeez. What's up with the shots today and yesterday? Jeez. Just, am I Jason Lord now?
No.
What's going on?
I've done that with Philadelphia.
Oh my God.
With where the Sixers and the Flyers play, I just refer to it as the Bank of the Month Arena. Because they changed the name of it all the time. So you got Ball State, and they're at Syracuse in 28. They don't have the other non-conference, but they've got Power 4 there. Then they've got Indiana, Iowa, Ohio State, Oregon, and UCLA at home. Really? Road games, Michigan State, Nebraska, Rutgers, and USC.
Mm-hmm.
See, notice how the conference schedule dramatically compensates for the non-con.
Mm-hmm.
So for Penn State, 25 and 26 are the 2 years out of the next 5, including this season, where they do not have a Power 4 team. So 3 of the 5 years, they've got a Power 4 conference team on the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And those 2 years are the only 2 years, at least through 28, that James Franklin has not played a Power 4 team in the non-conference. It's going to be interesting to see how people schedule from here on out.
Yeah.
Now, there'll be a lot of people that want to schedule Notre Dame. I got that. I mean, Notre Dame, I mean, just the name.
They're a gimme.
The name
bonus.
is a draw. I mean, you know, was the dome seat 50,000? Notre Dame shows
48,
up.
yeah.
Yes, Notre Dame shows up. What do you think? 30, 35,000 of their fans.
I'm going to be kind today. I'm going to be kind. I chose kindness.
Oh, the NBA. They're going to call it the Emirates NBA Cup.
It's the Emirates NBA Cup. It's better than the in-season tournament.
Jeez.
It's better than that. Speaking of other sports,
But again, just on the scheduling part of it, because it was important to get Syracuse on there because number one, like West Virginia, it's an old-time opponent that fans, it's easy for them to get to. All right, it's like the old days, even though the vast majority of fans now don't remember. I mean, look, we're talking. They've been in the Big Ten now for 31 years.
the ACC.
So you've got to be 40 years old. In other words, you were 9 when they were playing these teams on a year-in, year-out basis. Yeah. If you're 50, you were 19 when they were doing it and maybe went to school then. Right? Anybody under the age of 50, to them, this is what you're seeing now, minus the 4 West Coast schools, is the norm.
Yeah.
Okay? But still, in terms of regionalism, long-standing, at one point or another, rivalry, right? Yeah. It's easy for Penn State fans to get to West Virginia. It's easy for Penn State fans to get to Syracuse and vice versa. It's easy for Syracuse fans to get here, and it's a big deal for them to come here.
It's a 3.5-hour car ride.
And it was a big deal for West Virginia fans to come here last year. So they've been doing that, and that part's been good. It's going to be interesting to see beyond 28 what they want to do with it, and I think you can't really get a gauge on that until you see how the College Football Playoff Committee values that, as opposed to a couple of decisions that have been made in the past. Because the conferences are now so strong, it's really hard to get away with a conference schedule that doesn't have a level of difficulty to it. I mean, there's a degree of difficulty now for everybody because you now have Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, LSU, Auburn, Georgia, Texas, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma, all in the same conference, along with Florida. Really? Right? And Ole Miss is getting better. Right? Really? Right? It's hard in the Big Ten to get away. I just talked about the Penn State schedules. Okay, well, guess what? Over the next 5 years, you're playing home and away with Oregon, home and away with Washington. You're playing 2 road games at USC, one here. You got 2 home games at UCLA, 1 out there. You know, you've got Ohio State. Okay, 3 games with them over the next 5 years, home and away with Michigan. I mean, look at who you're playing. Wisconsin, you've got home and away with them. Right, Nebraska, home and away with them at some point. Now, who knows where Nebraska hasn't been in a bowl game since
it's been a while.
17. It was the last time.
Right.
They were in a bowl game. We'll see about them. But you've got all those programs home and away. And you're not just playing them home and away. Oh, and by the way, now we're done with Oregon. Now let's do the Ohio State thing. No, you're playing a lot of these teams in the same season.
Yeah.
I mean, it's changed the schedules for the 2 major conferences. I'm not so sure how much it's changed. It's changed the schedules in the ACC.
Oh, geez. No, we're not going
Well, no,
there.
the Stanford-Cal thing, let's be real here, doesn't help.
Yeah.
Right? Expansion should have the ability to make your conference stronger in some way between brands, markets, performance.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA meet.
They hit everything.
Those, in my opinion, the three criteria there. Plus, there are other elements too.
Yeah.
Stanford and Cal don't do that. SMU actually meets in market. Brand is a little shaky, right?
Yeah, iffy at best.
Right? But performance, they're not bad. Cal and Stanford, market, yeah, but in San Francisco, they're a massive afterthought. In San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose.
Yeah.
I mean, in the old newspaper analogy, they would be on page 8 or 9 of the Sunday San Francisco Examiner. Not good. Or the San Jose Mercury News. And the fact I even know those newspapers in today's world is amazing. Right? Okay? Brand, they don't. Okay? When it comes to volleyball, when it comes to...
When it comes to not football.
Right. They've got a lot of great brands at Stanford. Cal has none. Right now. I mean, in terms of powerful brands. Stanford in football and men's basketball, they don't have a good brand right now. So they don't meet that. So what the ACC did is they expanded,
But
for the sake of expansion, and as a hedge if they lose Florida State Clemson, but they made the conference performance-wise weaker.
they didn't add anything. If any, at best, they kept it even. At worst, it dropped.
I think it dropped. Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA in football and basketball made the Big Ten a stronger brand. Oklahoma and Texas made USC in football and basketball a stronger brand. Right? Meanwhile, and Utah, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, especially Utah, made the Big 12 a stronger brand. Stanford, Cal, and SMU did not. And as I've already told you the story, and I'm not going to say which program it is, one of them called Penn State basketball and wanted to play a non-conference game. And I don't know if they've set it up or not.
Yeah.
I haven't. Look,
no confirmations here.
No, only because, look, I see Jimmy a lot, Jimmy Mortelli, who does it, and I don't want to bug him about this. Right? When he wants to talk to me about what the schedule is, we'll talk about it. I mean, I'll let him get his job done and get signed contracts. But an ACC program contacted him, and they wanted to play Penn State. And they want to play him somewhere here in the state. Well, the reason is that they had a decent season last season. And the ACC, despite having a good ACC record, wasn't good enough to get them into the NCAAs.
Yeah.
And they said, we need Big Ten domino net to help us out, because our own conference, especially with the addition of the other three teams, isn't going to help us. See, that's okay.
Yeah.
When people are internally scheduling with that process about their own conference, that tells you something.
Yeah. Would you like to now go to baseball, Steve? Because there is some breaking news here on the show. It is official. The All-Star game will start with Paul Skenes pitching for the National League. That was just confirmed via the Pirates. He's going to be named starter. So Skenes will get to go up, and this comes less than 24 hours after Skenes had a 7-inning, no-hit, 11-strikeout gem with 99 pitches, where he then got pulled after his 6-pitch 7th inning.
Let's start with the natural part of it. The All-Star game's Tuesday.
Yeah.
He pitched yesterday. It's exactly the right point as to where you can pitch him. So it's not like, okay, he pitched Saturday, he pitched Sunday, can he go, the whole thing. It's actually within the natural realm of what's going on. It also is best for the game. It doesn't mean that Zach Wheeler, for example, is not deserving to start it. We know Glasnow's now in the IL.
Yeah.
All right. which helps these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But fans want to see him.
We're going to see in the first inning, most likely,
Aaron
Paul
Judge.
Skenes versus Gunnar Henderson, Juan Soto, Aaron Judge.
Right.
And that third at-bat is going to
Right.
be electric because
Right.
we've seen Skenes against
Sure.
Ohtani. He struck him out the first time.
Yep.
And the second time, Ohtani hit a ball 400-some-odd feet.
Right.
So it's going to just be fun. It's going to make its rounds on social media. It's going to be everywhere. It's going to be what we all want to see and what we all want to watch. And it gives me excitement because this is what should have happened.
Right.
And now it is happening. And it's going to be fun. And for those wondering at home, Skenes' stats so far through the season, I just want to talk about this.
Just phenomenal.
So he has 89 strikeouts through his first 66.1 innings pitched.
Yep.
He has 48 hits, 13 walks, 7 home runs, a 1.9 ERA. His average fastball velocity is 99.1. This is all since May 11th, by the way. And in terms of the pitchers in their first 11 starts, since the ERA became an official stat in 1913, he has 89 strikeouts and a 1.9 ERA. In terms of pitchers who have a sub-2 ERA in that same 11 start time span to start their careers, he has the most strikeouts. Number 2 is Fernando Valenzuela with 79, and Oral Hershiser with 77. So, Skenes is doing, I think, pretty well, is a fair statement to say out loud. Is that understandable?
Skenes has been everything baseball fans could hope for in the first overall pick in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
He is everything that the Pirates could hope for when they drafted him.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was 1 year ago this weekend that he was drafted.
Yeah, he's going from being
First
drafted
overall.
first to start in the All-Star game.
So this has a domino to it. Number one, with the draft being Sunday night, it's a great promotion showing that you can be in the draft and you can be in the major leagues in a short period of time, as opposed, because when the NFL has its draft, right, the players are going in right away. Hunter Nourzad I was getting an oil change the other day. Hunter Nourzad was at the dealership. He was looking at a car, right? And they're asking him, what's he going to do? And he says, well, I'm going to go to Kansas City. I'm going to be with the Chiefs. They were telling me, right? And I said, and somebody said to me, what do you think of that? And I said, he'll do great there. I said, but as far as I'm concerned, Patrick Mahomes should buy him the car. I said he's going to be protecting him, give him some incentive. No, but as the 5th round pick, Hunter Nourzad has a chance to play right away in Kansas City. I don't know, where he'll be. He'll make the roster, but he'll be on the roster, right? He'll make it, right, as the 5th round pick. I didn't talk about Olu. I'm talking about Hunter Nourzad, the 5th round pick. He'll make it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in baseball, first-round picks sometimes take 2-3 years to get there. It's such a process. And the NBA, all those first-round picks are going to be on the roster.
Wembanyama, day one, was there playing.
Right. I mean, they're going to be, but all of them will make rosters. Second round, the 55th guy will be.
He'll be starting rotation.
Most 55th guys selected in the NBA draft are automatic opening day guys. But the first round guys, they make it.
Yeah.
Right? They're on the rosters. Well, in baseball, that doesn't happen. It takes a process where you draft the guy, and the entire key is for the fans not to forget you have them. Okay? Well, Skenes skews all of that. He gets picked first overall, dynamic, outstanding, called up at the right time, and has been tremendous on the major league level. And he's now faced some teams a couple of times.
Yeah.
So it's not as if, we're waiting for the league to adjust to him. Well, the Cubs didn't adjust to him, right? I mean, others haven't either because he's just been that good.
For instance, the player drafted right after him, Dylan Cruz, the player who many were like, maybe he should go number 1. He just made his way the past month or so to AAA Rochester with the Red Wings. He did spend his time in Harrisburg. He was with the Senators.
Right.
And now he has made his way up to AAA. But he's a guy who do you take him or do you take Skenes? And they took Skenes.
You know what I said last year over and over again, take Skenes.
You take Skenes, and look at that. That seems like a pretty decent pick.
I mean, but so you got the draft Sunday night.
Mm-hmm.
So here's proof positive that you can get a quick path to the major leagues with the right guy.
Mm-hmm.
So at least sends that message, which makes the draft maybe a little more intriguing on Sunday night in the first round.
Yeah.
Then getting him out there, America has heard about him, but they have not seen him.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
They're going to see him on Tuesday.
Right. I mean, Pirate games are on TV, but again, they're not the Fox game of the week.
Yes. They're watching Yankees, Dodgers, Yankees, Braves, Giants, Red Sox.
Right. Something like that. They've heard about him and they've seen highlights of him. Now they're going to get to see him pitch, and he brings a level of curiosity that will get the casual fan engaged. There'll also be the Olympics crowd. I know Livy Dunn is not going to the Olympics, but a lot of casual people know who she is. Right? Well, that's his girlfriend.
Yeah.
Right? And they even had pictures of her, I guess, the ESPYs were last night?
The ESPYs were last night, and she is, by the way, coming back to LSU for her 5th and final year of eligibility.
Good.
And she is going to make probably the most in NIL in the collegiate programs going this coming year. She was, I think, number 1 or number 2 last year.
Well, I think, isn't a lot of it like she's able to sell on Instagram now and things like that? That's what NIL is supposed to be. Okay, NIL was not meant to be collectives.
It's meant to be individual.
Right? It's meant because Deion Sanders was talking about this at the Big 12 Media Days. Now, if anybody knows about the ability to make a buck, it's Deion Sanders.
Deion.
Right? But he knows. And he says, what is the NIL, the name, image, and likeness part meant? He's just talking about the name, image, and likeness part. I think he made a great point. He says, who have we seen on TV? He said, we saw Caleb Williams. He said, and we saw Bryce Young and Caitlin Clark, obviously. But who else have we seen among, quote, college stars? Livy Dunn's not on commercials. Right? She's not. You know, all the, hey, she's number 1 in NIL, the whole thing. Well, okay. But not in terms of traditional
TV
commercial media. And so the name, image, and likeness part, again, the marketplace determines that.
Yeah.
Okay? I've always used the DJ Uyunglele example that he was.
Subway?
No, Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper.
Right? Well, they started out 0-3 or something like that, right?
They're bad.
Right? Well, I mean, by their standards, they ended up winning their last 9 games or something like that, went 9-3 or whatever it was.
But compared to
Okay. Right. But he didn't play well. The opening game against, I think they played Georgia in the opening game that year. He didn't play well. And like through performance, Dr. Pepper after a month dropped him. Well, that's the real world. Right? Now, and so when it comes to name, image, and likeness, the actual definition of it, that actually weeds out what you can and can't do because the marketplace determines what you can and can't do. And again, when we were going through this 3 years ago, I said the thing I never dreamed of, I never dreamed of collectives. I never dreamed of that. I never even thought of it, didn't think it was a possibility. But that's essentially what it's become. Okay? Instead of name, image, and likeness, you might as well just call it collectives. And you need to have them. I mean, Happy Valley United is needed more than ever, right? And I know next year they're going to start paying them, athletes. But then there's this interesting one. And this is one that we're going to have to see how this plays out.
Intriguing.
Because it's another one of those court rulings.
Yeah. Well, at least.
Well, here it is.
Yeah.
Where is it? Ding, 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 ding. Court rules college athletes could be employees. Could.
which
they didn't say they didn't say they are,
but it opens the door.
Okay, but it opens the door to keep the process moving forward. Mm-hmm. College athletes whose efforts primarily benefit their schools may qualify. Okay? It doesn't say they do.
Yeah.
May qualify as employees deserving of pay under federal wage and hour laws. A U.S. appeals court ruled yesterday in a setback to the NCAA. See, now the part here, in a setback to the NCAA, okay, that's actually just on file that they just insert right away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The court, in the latest challenge to the NCAA's long-held notion of amateurism, said a test should be developed to differentiate between students who play college sports for fun and those whose efforts cross the legal line into work.
Oh, boy. That is. I believe they call that gray and murky, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but, I mean, these guys, look.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are having fun when they're playing, and they love the sport and what they do. But I mean, hey, that's really murky. With professional athletes as the clearest indicators, playing sports can certainly constitute compensable work, said Judge Felipe Restrepo. Ultimately, the touchstone remains whether the cumulative circumstances of the relationship between the athlete and college or NCAA reveal an economic reality that is employee-employer. A colleague in a concurring opinion questioned the difficulty of such a process, noting that nearly 200,000 students compete on nearly 6,700 Division I teams. Right? And that is the difficulty of it.
Yeah.
Now, Penn State has 833 athletes. The vast majority have some form of scholarship. It could be a tenth, could be a quarter, could be a half, could be a third, but whatever. You divide it up to get to certain numbers. And, of course, football, men's and women's basketball have fulls. You talk about 85 scholarships, they're all full. 13 men's scholarships, all full. Women's basketball allowed up to 15, all full. Right? Now, the wrestlings of the world got 9.9 and have to cobble together. And, it's a jigsaw puzzle that Cale and his staff impressively put together to make sure that all their athletes are helped.
Yeah.
Lawyer Paul McDonald, representing the plaintiffs, has suggested that athletes might make $2,000 per month or $10,000 per year for participating in NCAA sports. He said many students need the money for everyday expenses. Now, to be honest with you, you already have. It depends on the school, but there's something already in place. Cost of attendance. That's right around those numbers.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see where moving forward this all goes.
It's just another one that just throws another wrench into what's going on. And I don't mean a wrench of like wrecking the system, just a wrench of uncertainty.
Yes.
It's a wrench of uncertainty that's now thrown in.
Nothing is black and white. It is all gray. But we're going to talk about that in the coming weeks. Next week, it'll be a lot of interviews, and then we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming here on Sports Talk with, of course, Mr. Steve Jones, who's been roasting everybody today. He's just he's had one out for me, for Syracuse, for Rutgers.
All I know is the Carrier Dome, Carrier Engineering, air conditioning was the sponsor as a Syracuse-based company for years. The last football game I did in the Carrier Dome, it was 85 degrees outside.
It was.
And it was over 100 in the dome.
That it was.
Because
there was no air conditioning.
It doesn't have air conditioning.
And spoiler, there still isn't any.
Thank you for listening to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a 7 Mountain Media production. Come back at 11 every weekday for analysis of the latest happening in the sports landscape. From college football to European soccer, Steve and Kyle cover it all on Sports Talk with Steve Jones.